The RE4 Remake has been out for about 2 months now. I've clocked in over 200 hours into the game, I've gotten every single achievement, and I even had a chance to call out the people who have been calling this game soulless. But as much as I love this game, I do have issues with the RE4 Remake. I actually want to switch things up and talk about everything that I personally did not like about this game. I never got the chance to review this game for you guys, so if you want to hear a new perspective on the RE4 Remake, well, you're at the right place. By the end of this video, let me know if you guys agree or disagree with my points. Also, be sure to subscribe if you're new around here.
Resident Evil 4.
Can I be completely honest with y'all? My biggest issue with this game has something to do with the gameplay design choices that Capcom decided to make, but more on that in a few. First, let me run through what I love about this game and why people are wrong by calling this game bad. First of all, the gameplay. It speaks for itself. I'm not going to analyze the gameplay. We all know how the game plays. It's fast, it's fluid, it's smooth, it's pretty much bug-free. I mean, I had almost no bugs while playing this game. The visuals, graphically and artistically, amazing. The detail in this game, amazing. Everything from the ragdoll effects to some of the environmental stuff, I mean, it's too good. The soundtrack in this game, top tier, 11 out of 10 soundtrack.
I remember those lost in the dark, the bullet or the blade that kept us apart.
The enemy AI is a lot more aggressive in this game. The content shop in the remake is the best content shop that we've seen in any Resident Evil game so far. The gameplay, the music, the dialogue, it's all well done here. All of that stuff that I just listed is 10 out of 10, top tier, and then it hit me. The game has some issues.
Take it however you want.
The dog maze is not as good as the original. The dogs aren't as scary in the remake. I also feel like these towers take away like the point of a maze. The point of a maze is to get lost in it, to not really know where you're going. If you just look at the towers, they show you exactly where you need to go. I feel like that takes away a lot of the tension, and plus, having Ashley with you also takes away the tension. Another thing, the OG castle, in my personal opinion, is much better than the remake.
Don't think our hosts are gonna roll out the red carpet.
Now, as much as I love the original game, I do feel like that castle was also dragged out a little too much. But the thing with the original RE4 is that castle had a certain artistic look to it that gave it a unique style. I feel like the castle, for the most part in the RE4 remake, it looks basically just like the castle from Resident Evil 8. This room right here really stood out to me. It looks gorgeous, graphically just looks amazing, but I feel like we don't see much of this as the castle goes on. I feel like the more you go into the castle, it just looks a lot like Resident Evil Village's castle. Now, I know that makes sense because RE4 and RE Village both take place in Europe, but I feel like in the original RE4, if you really go back and play that game again, that castle had a very unique look to it. The castle in the RE4 remake, for the most part, it just feels like another Resident Evil Village castle. I feel like there's nothing too unique about it. I mean, there's a lot of unique elements, but like in terms of the look, it just looks like another rundown castle. It doesn't look like something too special. Also, a lot of parts from the castle were cut out. I just feel like the original game had a better sense of urgency. For example, look at this scene right here from the original. Now look at this one from the remake.
Run. Now!
You see what I mean? I just feel like the original was much more intense. Like, oh shoot, how do I react? I also have just a little problem with the pacing in the remake. It's good. Like, the pacing is really good because a lot of people have complained that, oh, the remake's pacing is terrible, blah, blah, blah. But the original RE4 also had some awkward pacing. My problem with the remake is there's a lot of moments that are dragged out for no reason. Like, just obvious moments that shouldn't even be there. The game kind of ramps up the pacing, but then you get to this moment right here with the little, wrecking ball. And this entire section, I don't like. I just feel like, I don't think it's pointless. I see what they were trying to go for. I just didn't like this section. I just thought it was, too dragged out. It also doesn't help the fact that on hardcore and especially professional, and I think even on standard, sometimes it takes like 2, 3, 4, 5 bullets just to stun one enemy. I get it. I love the challenge. I love when games add that extra challenge. Remember in the Resident Evil 2 remake, how even on standard difficulty, it would take like 20 bullets just to kill one zombie. That's what it felt like here. And it makes sense because the team who worked on the RE2 remake also made the RE4 remake. And it was just little things like that that just made it extra frustrating. And that kind of leads into the fact that I feel like a lot of the boss fights in this game weren't entirely well designed.
To have been bestowed with lores that
You talk too much.
Another example is Salazar, who is arguably one of the hardest bosses in the game. I love the Salazar fight. I love the dialogue between Salazar and Leon.
So don't get too carried away. You'll be just seeing this over.
I love the boss design. I mean, I truly do like everything about this fight, except one thing. Salazar's spit acid. Not only was Salazar a bullet sponge and basically took all of my ammo. Again, I think this boss fight is well made for the most part. It just feels like certain mechanics in the game just don't mix together. I didn't really find this boss fight difficult, even though I said it's one of the hardest. I didn't find it really difficult. I just found it annoying. I just think that a lot of the boss fights could have been designed a little bit better. Not too much better, but just a little better.
But at least you had some kind of code. Some honor. Look at you now.
This is going to be a hot take, and let me know if you guys agree with me on this specifically, but I feel like when you get to the island section of the game, it feels like Capcom just kind of doesn't really know what to do with all of the enemies. So when you get to certain sections, Capcom is just like, oh, let's just spawn every enemy that you're used to and just throw them at the player. Also, one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to boss fights is I do not like when you're fighting a boss and then the boss is just like, oh, I'm gonna spawn a bunch of my minions while you have to fight me at the same time. Some people might defend this and say, well, it just adds, it's the final boss for a reason. It's supposed to be challenging. They're supposed to throw more enemies to make it more intense. I get that, but this is where the design choice comes in. They could have made the final boss arena much smaller. They could have like cut this boss arena in half and then just make Sadler's AI much more aggressive. That's how you make a final boss more intense, more engaging.
Nothing personal, Leon.
I'm just saying I like that about the OG. I liked how when you fight Sadler, that's it. There are no extra enemies. You don't fight anything extra. You just fight Sadler. It also doesn't help the fact that Sadler wasn't really present for most of the game. If anything, Sadler felt more like a background character. I mean, I would say Krauser felt more like the final boss character. Remember those phone calls that Leon would have with like Sadler or Salazar in the original game? I really wish they brought those back in the remake. I feel like it would have added more character development and more significance to Salazar and Sadler if Leon could talk to them through his little, phone device.
Right. I'm probably due for confession anyway.
I also have some other small nitpicks with this game, which I'm going to run through right here. Ashley's AI. It's not perfect, but there were a lot of issues with her AI. I would tell her to stay next to me, and then she would do the opposite, or I would tell her to stay away from me, and she would get closer to me. Sadler's 2 servants in the remake are completely useless. I was hoping that maybe one of them was going to become a boss fight, but it turns out both of his servants are just useless enemies who are just there to look cool. The base reload on most of the guns in the game is extremely slow, especially the starter pistol. I don't know why reloading in this game without upgrades is that slow, but obviously once you max out your guns, it's an entirely different story. U3 was cut from the game, which we all know this. It's like the #1 thing that everybody is upset about, but I'm sure that U3 will show up in the Separate Ways DLC in the future. The Novistadors were enemies that I could not stand in this game, but I don't think anybody can stand these enemies. They're like arguably the most annoying enemy in Resident Evil 4. There's no Plaga removal laser gun in this game, which was a gun from the original that you unlocked by beating the game on professional. The Ganado voice lines aren't as aggressive or scary in the remake.
Ahí está. Mátalo. Ahí están, matando.
I also feel like the death animations were a lot better in the original, and I feel like that's one of the only few things that the original truly does so much better than the remake. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, it's really hard to say which game is better. Personally, I think that both of these games are amazing. I would give the original RE4 a 10 out of 10, but I'm gonna give the remake a 9 out of 10. Most of my issues with this game do not ruin my experience. I just feel like there are certain design choices that hold this game back from a 10 out of 10. But there is so much in this game that I love that completely overpower the negatives. But now I want to hear your opinions. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.